Hi everyone, it's Ellen and I've got a new project for you this week. This is a project based on the paintings of Sonia Delaunay, and she was a colourist and she used to experiment with harmonious colours, so colours that are within the same colour family, and contrasting colours, so the opposite colour to the root of that family. The root of the family would mean, for instance, if I said the red family, where you've got crimson, red, orange and yellow, the root of the family would be red. So quite a nice project this week. It gives you a bit of a chance to design something of your own and to use a colour scheme of your own. I've used quite a simple design, really. I wanted to make my composition dynamic, so I wanted to use this diagonal line going through the middle, trying to make people look this way towards you know, across the picture. And I have I'm going to use sort of the orange family. Now secondary colours can have families as well, so that would include red, orange and yellow. So yes, I want to use lots of shades of orange, lots of shades of yellow, and then use blue as the opposite colour to orange in order to create contrast. Now as you can see, the compositions that Sonia Delaunay made were quite bold, and it's all about flat areas of colour. Another movement, if you like this sort of thing, which you may want to research and look into, is hard edge abstraction, which is where a particular artist used geometric shapes, and then they would use one colour per block, and then think about how the shapes would fit together and how far they could stretch that. But then also they would talk about using different colour combinations and seeing how far they could stretch those colour combinations as well. Okay, so as you can see, I've started mine, and with this, in order to get sort of the creative juices going, I think it's a good idea to get your background in first. So for instance, when I was drawing this, what I did was I knew that I wanted to use one circle in my composition. I mean, you can use, you know, to use more than one is great, and odd numbers are good, but I decided to use one circle. And what I did was I knew that my circle would near enough fill my painting. So first of all, I decided how I was going to cut my circle up. So I drew these lines in first, knowing that everything would come from the middle. Then I designed my colour scheme. So I was thinking about putting different colours together, and it's quite useful to have a little bit in your sketchbook where you can put different colours together and see what you want to play with. I've been looking a lot at Van Gogh paintings recently, and was interested in painting different kinds of yellows on yellow and things like that, so that's why I've gone for this. So now what I've done is I've put my first colours onto the background. So I've painted these separate backgrounds first, and then I came back and I mixed up a lemon yellow. So I've used my lemon yellow tube, and I mixed purple with ultramarine and crimson to make purple, and then I added a tiny amount of purple into the yellow, and I added lots and lots of white to it so I could make the palest lemon yellow that I wanted to. And then I painted in this section and this section. I then made the colour a bit richer, a little bit darker, added some more lemon yellow into it, and then painted in these three sections here. Now what I want to do is I want to think about how the colours react against each other. So I'm going to be putting different colours next to each other. What you can do, sometimes people do almost an alternate theme, where you could have lemon yellow going down like this with another colour, maybe with the blue, or what I'm doing is I'm trying to balance my colours. So I may have a large area of pale lemon yellow here and then have another one here. I'm trying to almost create a balance of the colours. I didn't put a lot of lemon yellow on this side because this is so pale. So I've got 3 areas of lemon yellow here, and I've got this large background here. So that's kind of the idea that I'm going with. Okay, so I've finished with lemon yellow for the moment. What I've decided is I want to have quite a range of colours on here. So I've made a bit of a rule. I mean, we are the artists, we are in charge, and we can ignore the rule if we want to. But my rule is that I'm not going to paint any more than 3 sections in one colour, because I want to stretch my yellows and my oranges out, and I also want to stretch my blues out and try and get as many different shades as I can. And I can't do that if I'm painting lots and lots and lots of the same colour. So it may appear random, but it's not so random. But yes, it might be fun to kind of give yourself a couple of rules as you're making it, and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to make some cadmium yellow. This, just out of interest's sake, this is lemon yellow here, and this is cadmium yellow, so you can see the real difference between the two. A lot warmer because it's made with red. So I'm putting a little bit of crimson up here and a little bit of ultramarine to make my purple. Purple is the opposite colour or contrasting colour to yellow, so I want to put a tiny bit of that in my yellow to knock it back, because I want all these bold colours to sit nicely together. I want to keep their brightness, but I do want them to sit together. I don't want them fighting. So I'm going to mix my red and my blue together to make a purple, like that. Then get some cadmium yellow. Now when you're making this paint, you do need quite a lot of it. You need, I know this sounds silly and how would you know, but you need 3 times as much paint as you think you're going to need, because you end up mixing it into other things, you end up retouching bits, all sorts of things. So I'm just going to take a little bit of purple, tiny amount. I'm going to mix it into the yellow, and as you can see, it just takes the edge off. And I'm going to mix it into all of my yellow like that, and then to take the paint off the brush, I'm just going to twist it around like that. That means not too much paint gets lost in the water. I've got my paint rag, so I'm just drying my brush off. I don't want it to get really wet and sloppy. I'm going to add a little bit more purple in, but not too much. Wash my brush again, dry my brush again, and then I want some white. Now this white, you can add a tiny bit to it and it will keep the shade the same, but what it does do is it makes it opaque. As you can see, I've painted pale on top of dark here, and you can paint pale on top of dark, but if you want that really solid block, you do have to do 2 or 3 layers to make sure that none of the blue creeps through, unless you want it to. I mean, that might be your plan, and that's fine. So I've added a small amount of white in there to make it opaque. Roll the brush, and then as a starting point I'm going to make 3 shades of yellow, so that's my darkest one. I'm going to take a bit more white. White is like gold with acrylic paint, you can't have enough really. I'm going to make a middle tone. I'm going to make more of that because I may need more than that. Well, we'll see how it goes. Clean the brush, more white, and I'm going to make a pale tone for yellow. So tones and tints are talking about the shadow. How dark is your tone? And contrast is really, really important. We've talked about the fact that that's the thing that makes your painting impressive. That's the thing about making your painting ordinary or exciting. It's the contrast. But also, if you were to photograph or photocopy this in black and white, surprisingly there wouldn't be a lot of difference between this. And that's when you've got good colour technique, good painting technique. That's quite often the next thing that needs to be dealt with, is your contrast in your picture. So that's something that's a really good thing to keep an eye on when you're doing this. Okay, so I'm going to take some of my cadmium yellow and I'm going to paint some blocks in. Now I would say paint light to dark, so even though we're just doing blocks, if you have some kind of methodology in what you're doing, I just find it easier. It's something I like. I like to have a little bit of an order. It's organised chaos, really. So I'm going to take my very pale cadmium yellow and I want to paint it on top of this lemon yellow here. So with Sonia Delaunay's paintings, they're all about shape and they're all about colour. So there is no texture in the paint whatsoever. So what is important to do is to find where your hand is strongest to paint, and as I may have said before, I find this painting away from me the strongest, either painting away or painting towards, but I find painting towards with a brush in this way would get messy. I don't like it. And then I'm going to turn my page. I'm going to make sure I've got a nice clean edge, and then I'm going to paint back the other way. So as you can see, all the paint strokes are in the same direction and there's no texture to distract you from what you've painted. I'm not actually over keen on that tone, so I'm going to change it and I'm going to go for a warmer yellow. I'm going to go for this middle yellow, see what that's like, and I'm going to paint it on my dark blue section. I'm going to put a bit here. So again, I'm putting all of my hand on the table so it doesn't wiggle, and I'm going to gently go around in my block like that and swoop round. I'm not going to go absolutely to the edge until I can go here and I can go in the direction that I feel happiest with, and then go in that direction again, and I will get the nice smooth strokes that I want. And then back again. As you can see, there's a bit of a lump of paint there and I've gone over the edge. So I'm dealing with that edge first, getting that smooth. You can see that the paper behind is coming through. That's fine, I'm not worried about that. I'm going to just scrub that. If you do it quickly, it comes off. And the same here. It's almost like you push it back to where it's meant to be. And then I'll let that dry and then I can do a second coat over the top. I'm going to do this lovely rich yellow, which I've been dying to do. And I'm going to put it here on all these different yellows. Be careful not to put your hand in anything you've painted already. And you can see that the yellows all behave differently next to each other. Sometimes paler colours, even if it's the same area, they look like they're bigger. Darker colours can recede, but this is what Robert and Sonia Delaunay were interested in, how do colours react against each other? Do they create a mood? They talked about different colours creating rhythms with the lights. So they would go out to the bebop jazz clubs, and obviously the electric lights would be in the dark, and there'd be figures dancing, and a lot of inspiration was taken from those lights in the dark, radiating out, and then, like I say, they took it further, and wanted to see how they could make colour almost move or shimmer on the page by putting different colours together. They believed that harmonious colours had a slower rhythm and contrasting colours had a faster rhythm. I don't know. Why don't you have a play and find out? So yeah, this is just my first layer of yellow. I'll probably put a second layer on top just to make it more opaque and to make sure that the paler yellow doesn't come through. So there, you can see you've got the different yellows radiating next to each other. So if I put this yellow again next on this blue, for instance, can't even see the lines. Ah, it's a big chunky line. Ah, here we go. Do on this bit. You can see how thin the paint is, even with the white. And because the blue is coming through it, it's looking a bit of a dirty colour. But leave that to dry, put another coat on, and it will be much brighter and it will react much more strongly with the blue. Okay, so I'm going to let those bits dry for now, and I'm going to make some orange. So to make some orange, I need my cadmium yellow and my cadmium red, which is hiding. Don't need as much red because the red is very powerful, very strong, and it will overtake the yellow. So I'm going to mix those two together first. As you see, I don't mix all the red straight in at once. I mix it in slowly to the side, and then I can control how much red goes in there. So there's some orange. So to knock it back with cadmium red and cadmium yellow, what works particularly well is cerulean blue, which is here. So just a touch of that. I think I'm actually going to have a bit more yellow. Doesn't look a lot of paint there. So we'll mix the yellow in first. A little bit more red, make it orangey. how strong you want your orange to be. That's better. That's better. Okay, so I take my paint off the brush, wash it, dry it, and then touch of blue, tiny touch of blue. Now, as you know from other weeks, you add too much blue in, it will go brown, and we don't want that. So tiny bit of blue in there, takes the edge off. And I'm going to add some white. Now again, too much white will make it peachy, and again, we don't really want peach. I've been very naughty and made my white dirty, but as it's yellow, it doesn't matter. I'm not worried. So you end up with a slightly paler orange. If you want to make it stronger, more yellow. And some red. There we go. The blue is in it already, so if we're not putting a huge amount in, we don't need to put more blue in. But just warmed it up a little bit and made a bit more paint. That's better. Okay, so now I'm going to put a pale orange on my darker orange section. Carefully following the lines round. This is kind of a mid orange. Like I say, you can experiment by adding more red to it, adding more yellow to it, adding white to it, adding more blue to it. Obviously each colour will change it. If you add more red to it, it will make it red and nearer red. Add more blue and it will be more brown, so it will be darker but it will be a muddier tone. It all depends what you want. So this, like I say, this is a really nice exercise because you get to play. Get to play with colours, put them in different combinations, and see what they do. Okay, so I'm going to use my same orange and I'm going to put it on the cerulean. So I'm kind of echoing my colour. It's in the same ring and on the opposite side in an opposite colour. Come back to that side in a minute. Again, the paint is, even with the white, is quite thin, so you will have to put a second coat on. But acrylic paint dries really quickly, so that you won't have to wait too long to do that. Again, same careful smooth strokes, making sure that all your brush strokes go the same way. And just tidy up that edge a little bit. Now, talking about that reminds me, I was going to go back to my yellow with my second coat. You can see how much putting the second coat will change this yellow here. Was it the middle yellow or was it the pale yellow? I can't remember. Middle yellow, that's fine. Also, the beauty of acrylic paints is you can, if you don't like something or you do something wrong, you can just paint over it. Just like that. If you haven't put a lot on and it's related to the same colour, you can just put the paint straight over it, and it will just be absorbed in that colour. So you can see that colour is much more bold now. It stands out much better. It may need another coat. It might be fine. Bit messy on the inside, so I will just clean my brush and then clean up that inside ridge there. Now, because this paint is thicker, if you have a wet patch next to a wet patch, it's not going to bleed, it's going to sit where you put it. So I can put my second layer of this yellow. Now this will need a third layer because it's really quite thin. It's thinner because there's less white in it. It's the white that makes it opaque. Okay, so I've put lots of yellows and lots of oranges on here. I'm just going to show you how to mix a blue. Now I've got two blues on my palette already. I've got my cerulean and I've got my ultramarine. Now to knock back my ultramarine and my cerulean, I need orange. So that's quite nice. It's all there and it's already mixed up already. So I'm going to have a little bit more cerulean, I think. Bit more, and then a little bit of orange just on the side. Probably won't need all of that. You mix it in. Oh, I might actually need a little bit more. It's being very naughty, putting a dirty brush in another colour. Very bad. So yeah, so you have more paint than you think you need, but it's always going to come in. You're always going to need it to knock back, to put extra layers on, all sorts of things, and that is the key. If you make more than you think you need, you never have to mix it again, because the odds of getting what you had in the first place are enormous. So it's just better to have it. I've got a piece of cardboard wrapped with foil around it. And foil obviously is shiny and it doesn't absorb the paint, so therefore it stays wet for quite a long time. Okay, just getting some more white paint, and I'm going to mix a bit in to make this opaque. If we just put a small amount in, it doesn't change the shade. Like that. Wash my brush again. Make a middle tone. I love this colour. Like that. And then mix a paler tone. So all I'm doing is I'm putting less paint in each swirl of colour, and that makes the same colour run through the three shades, but it's easier to make shades, and you've got a good pile of paint for each one. Okay, so I'm going to put some pale blue in this section, I think. No, that's pale, pale, pale. Don't want that. Maybe I'll put it in between and put something dark on the other side. It's quite nice to do a sketch beforehand, if you want to plan it out. I was just curious. I wanted to get on with it. The nice thing is if you like this and if you enjoy it, you can keep the theme of your work and then you can do more versions of it. So for instance, I could do the same design, but then I could do it with other colours. I may paint over some of the boxes if I think, do you know what, actually that there's too much pale here or something like that. But that's part of it. Always looking and assessing what you've made. And then I'm going to put a nice band of middle blue I'm going to put it in this section here. It's quite interesting how it looks completely opposite to that pale yellow that it's next to, creating a real contrast. If you choose to, and if you're neat enough, if you think, oh, I like that blue next to that blue, you can keep the background. I just found it useful to, I think it's best to paint the background in first, because your background is painting in uninterrupted. You're not trying to paint round something. It's not going to be weird brush marks. It's not going to have stops and starts. But also, it starts making you think about the colours you're going to deal with. You know, you start reacting to the colours as soon as they're down. And you think, oh, what would go on top of that? What would go on top of that? And then you can sort of progress through your painting. It's just easier to get started, I think. Nothing scarier than a white bit of paper. And you've almost got a bit of a clashiness going on there with the orange and the blue. That might be something that you want to keep. It might not be something you want to keep. But like I say, as you go along, you can look at it and you think, oh, I like that. I actually really like this orange, yellow and blue here. And that might be something that I echo maybe over here or over here somewhere. But yes, just practice putting different colours together in your scheme, and then see what works. If something doesn't work, like for instance, I'm not overly happy